If you are in the woods, you have to rely on your creativity to fill your time and not rely on screens to entertain. I also love that being in the woods shows you what you value in life and what you don't. Also, being in the woods takes my mind off of everyday stress and lets me focus on the task at hand, or take my mind off of everything. I know that survival is not just in the woods, but that is where I place my focus, because the woods are more accessible to me, and since my capstone is about shelter building, that's the best place for me to do it. I learned that other people make surviving and living easier. I went alone for my first experience, and it was kind of bad. The weather was bad, and I didn't have a shelter of any kind because I spent too long looking for a place to build it. So I spent the night under the stars missing my bed. The place I went had no materials, just bushes, and I had no one to talk to, so it was really boring. But when I go with my brothers into the woods, we almost always build a shelter, and they're usually really sturdy shelters and would be a great place to survive in. Friends keep me occupied and focused and help me with the tasks that need to be done. If I went alone, I would be overwhelmed if it was for a long time, worrying about what food I would have, what water, collecting wood, and building shelters. So having someone to help me would be ideal, but I know I don't need other people. I need to be self-reliant and organized and able to survive. Being prepared is very important. For that experience, I walked around in tall seedy grass for an hour, and by the end of it, my socks were covered in prickly seeds. If I would have brought duct tape or boots, I would not have had to waste time pulling the seeds out of my socks. I also wish I had a hatchet or a larger knife to clear the branches from the bushes to build a shelter. I also learned that food and water are not first priority. You can go 8 to 21 days without food and 3 days without water, depending on the circumstances. The first priority should be to find a place for a shelter, somewhere that's out of the wind and out of the rain or snow. Preparing for survival is not that hard. If you've ever watched any survival show, they cover a lot of situations that you could go through. So while preparing an emergency pack, just think of those situations, and that should be enough. But you do not need to prepare because you can still use what's around you in order to survive. The next thing I learned from my brother, LeMaster. He is in the Air Force Special Forces and has gone through SEER, which stands for Survival, Invasion, Rescue, and Escape. It prepares aircrew and high risk of isolation personnel to return from any type of survival situation. He taught me a few simple tricks that go a really long way in surviving, and all of the tools needed for this fit in an Altoids tin. The first is a fishing hook and fishing string. Fishing hook and fishing string can be used to sew materials together, or to sew your skin together, or just to go fishing. The next thing is an eyedropper of bleach. Bleach purifies water with just 1 drop. 1 drop purifies 1 liter of water. Life straws do not purify water, they just clean the chunks out and make it taste better. The next thing is char cloth or Vaseline cotton balls. Vaseline cotton balls is just what it sounds like. It's a cotton ball soaked in Vaseline, and it burns for a really long time. But if you do not want a soggy cotton ball with all your other tools, you can make char cloth. You make char cloth by cutting cotton or denim into 2-inch by 2-inch squares and put them in an Altoids tin with a nail-sized hole in the top to let the smoke out but let no air in. Once the smoke stops coming out of the top, that means the char cloth is finished. Flint and steel are very important for lighting the char cloth or the Vaseline cotton ball. There is a very useful way to test if food is edible. It is separate the plant into 3 separate parts: root, stem, and bud. First, you do the skin test. You rub it on your wrist and wait a while, and if no rash or burning or itching occurs, then you can move on to the next test. The next test, after you prepare it, is the lip test. You rub it on your lip and wait 15 minutes. If nothing happens, then you put it in your mouth and chew it. Before you swallow, wait 15 minutes and wait for any reactions. If there's no reaction, then you can swallow it. After you swallow it, you have to wait several hours because if anything happens, then At least it was just one bite. After the first semester, I focused mostly on shelter building and not on the other aspects of survival. After my overnight experience and research, I learned a lot of things. The first shelter I built on a hill and it was snowy, so all the water and snow ran off through my shelter and it was kind of cold. Also, I learned that having a hatchet and a sleeping bag are the two most important things, at least in my experience. A hatchet can help you clear branches for your shelter to make the roof or the walls or your bed. The shelter does not have to fully surround you, which is something new I learned. I thought, usually when I think of shelters, it's something that surrounds you and keeps you safe from everything around you. But all it really needs to do is protect you from the wind and the rain. My favorite shelter is called a debris shelter, which is very helpful and very insulated. I have a presentation about how to build one. It's not a video. First, you build a tripod-shaped stand for it, with one leg twice as long as you are, so you can fit under it. The second step is to place a rib-like foundation all across it to not let any smaller branches drop through it. Then you place as many sticks and leaves and pine boughs as you can on top of that, and the more you put, the better the shelter is. That shelter has a lot of insulation, and the snow also works as an insulator and holds it together. Excellent. I also learned the importance of a bed. If you lay directly on the solid ground, the ground takes up to 15 degrees from your body heat, which in a survival situation is not good. Also, if you have a draft under your bed, it is not good. To create a bed, you just place a bunch of pine boughs and leaves in a pile and don't let any holes for air to get through. Being prepared is very important, but the likeliness of you being in a life-threatening survival situation is not very likely. Although you won't need it, it is very fun to practice all of these things I've talked about. So if you want to do these, I would suggest going camping and trying them all out.